Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I am Kamala Harris. I am the Attorney General for the state of California, and I am very honored and pleased to present a number of leaders locally, statewide, nationally, and internationally on the issue of human trafficking, and in particular, a group of leaders who are dedicated to end human trafficking as we know it. Beginning this morning, we have in a large auditorium here at USC convened leaders on the issue of human trafficking to present a report that was the product of several months of work. Hundreds of leaders from law enforcement, from NGOs, from academia, coming together to look into and then present findings on the state of human trafficking in California. One of the most significant aspects of this report are the recommendations that come out of those convenings. And the report, generally speaking, not only does a retrospective on the issue of human trafficking in California, but also offers a forecast of where it is going in terms of trends, but also a forecast, as evidenced by the group that you see here and that is convened downstairs, of a renewed commitment across many jurisdictional lines to combat the issue of human trafficking, to employ best practices, to renew our dedication to sharing information and intelligence and training, to make sure that we maximize our ability to reach out to victims and create accountability and severe consequence for those who engage in the trafficking of human beings. There are many issues that we looked into when convening this group, and essentially, soon after I took office, I decided that we would do this report. It falls on the heels of many years that I worked on this issue, both as the elected district attorney of San Francisco, but also as a career prosecutor, recognizing that we have girls, women, boys, and men who are being sold and bought for money, and then put into forced work that includes sex work and includes forced labor. We, many years ago, passed AB 22 back in 2005 that created a state law in California, the law of human trafficking. We associated in that law not only penalties for the criminal penalties for the perpetrators, but one of the beauties of that legislation is we acknowledged the pathology of the crime and allowed then that once the perpetrator was prosecuted successfully as a defendant, the victim could then go out of criminal court and walk into a civil courtroom and sue for ill-gotten gains, for financial damages, recognizing that we wanted to get to the heart of the matter, get where it hurts, and that's the pocketbook, the checkbook of the perpetrator. That work was done then. Part of what was required from AB 22 was that there would be a report, one-time report done by a temporary task force that was created to look into the state of human trafficking. That report was published in 2007. What the folks here know is that the world is a very different world today than it was in 2007. And so that's why we decided to convene this group of experts to take a second and fresh look at the issue of human trafficking and publish the report which we are unveiling today. There are three major components to the report that I think bear noting, and there are five in general. One of the issues that we know is that as we have looked at the state of human trafficking in California, we find increased evidence, both in terms of data collected and anecdotal evidence, that transnational gangs as well as criminal street gangs are increasingly involved in the issue of human trafficking. They have figured out and believe that it is, unlike the trafficking of guns and drugs, a high-profit, low-risk crime to engage in the trafficking of human beings. So we looked at this issue up and down the state. We have the benefit now versus 5 years ago of having real dedication at a local law enforcement level around the building of task forces in various regions of California who have been gathering the information about the increase in the association with criminal street gangs and cartels. Part of the recommendations of the report is that we continue to support local law enforcement to have more resources to do more work that will be task force work that we know has also proven that when we coordinate around it, we tend to find more of the crime, we find more of the victims, and we prosecute more of the offenders. And so that's another part of what we have found with the data that has been collected this time as a first-time collection of data, and better than ever before. These 9 anti-trafficking task forces in the last 2 years have identified nearly 1,300 victims of human trafficking in California. They have initiated more than 2,500 investigations into that conduct. They have arrested close to 1,800 individuals and trained over 25,000 law enforcement officials, prosecutors, community-based NGO-connected organizations, first responders on the issue of human trafficking. A logical inference there is that when we give local law enforcement the resources and we supply the training, we increase the number of victims we can identify, increase the number of cases we can prosecute, increase the number of perpetrators and predators that we can incarcerate for this crime. Another aspect of this report that is worth noting is that we have validated our longstanding belief that the issue of human trafficking is not only an issue that concerns people being trafficked across international borders, but involves our own children. This report has indicated through the work that we have done that 72% of the victims who are being trafficked are U.S. born. And I'd suggest to you then that part of the findings illuminate the fact that when we think of human trafficking, we rightly think of it as a human rights crime. But we should also understand that it is absolutely pure law enforcement public safety issue as well. That it not only involves the 5-year-old, and there are stories of that, trafficked through the tunnels between Mexicali and Calexico up into California and being trafficked up I-5, but it includes the runaway from Kansas being trafficked through Las Vegas into West Hollywood. It's an issue that also increasingly involves not only children who are girls, but boys. Part of what our findings indicate is that while we have given attention to the issue of sex trafficking, more attention can and must be given to the issue of labor trafficking. When we look for it, we tend to find it more. And anecdotally, we know that as it relates to labor trafficking, the victims there tend more likely to be boys than girls. And the sex trafficking, the victims tend to be more girls and women. Of those who are trafficked from out of the country, our findings are that the majority, as I've said, are American, followed by China. 6% of the victims, based on the data we have collected, are from China, and then 5% of the victims are from Mexico. Another interesting observation in this report about the changing trends over the last 5 years is the increasing connection between this crime and technology, both in terms of how the perpetrators are marketing the product, which are human beings. They're doing it online. In particular, one of the greatest offenders is Backpage.com. And I will repeat what I've said many times. Backpage.com needs to shut itself down when it has created as its business model the profiting off the selling of human beings and the purchase of human beings. We know that other good businesses, such as Craigslist, understood how it could be misused and mishandled, and they shut that aspect of their business model down. Backpage needs to do the same. But technology has also proven over the last 5 years to be a tool to help law enforcement and all of us reach out to victims. Unlike 5 years ago, most people are now carrying their computer in their pocket through their smartphone. And it gives us the ability then to reach a very isolated victim through the use of the internet, for example, and social networking sites. So part of the findings of this report include the need for increased collaboration with technology, both in terms of the adoption of technology by local law enforcement, but also collaboration with social networking sites to reach out to victims. An example of that would be a collaboration we recently engaged in with Yahoo. Yahoo agreed that they would collaborate with us, and in particular that they would program their search engine so that the search engine would identify words that are typically associated with human trafficking. In the event that those words were put into the search engine, a piece of information would drop down, a banner indicating an 800 number and how the victim can contact folks who can help them. So there's a great need for and a great opportunity for collaboration with technology and technology companies. What you see here is a group of people who are leaders from our federal law enforcement representing the United States Department of Justice. We have Andre Barat, U.S. Attorney representing Los Angeles region. We have U.S. Attorney Ben Wagner representing the Eastern District, who have both, as two of our 4 U.S. attorneys in California, been working hand in hand with state and local law enforcement to deal with these offenses. They were here and have been presenting this morning. We have Secretary Hilda Solis, who of course is the Secretary of Labor, and she's going to be speaking, but representing the national focus and the administration, the Obama administration's priority on this issue, not to mention her long-standing personal work as a groundbreaking leader in California. You will also be hearing from the Attorney General of the country of Mexico, Maricela Morales Ibanez. You will be hearing from an incredible and courageous leader who is a survivor of human trafficking. Her name is Ima Matul, and she's going to tell a little bit about her story. You will also hear from our own Los Angeles County Sheriff Lee Baca, who has been one of the law enforcement leaders together with Chief Charlie Beck, who presented earlier today, and he will talk about some of the local law enforcement strategies. And then finally, you will hear from District Attorney Mike Ramos, who represents San Bernardino in his 3rd term as the DA there. But I know him as a previous president of the California District Attorneys Association, a leader of the National District Attorneys Association, and he'll speak about the commitment and the leadership of his office and of DAs to deal with this very important issue. And then Nick Sensley, who is the former police chief of Truckee, is here. He has been conducting trainings up and down the state of California for local law enforcement. He's been moderating today's discussion, but he also represents Humanity United, which is a group that has been very generous in the way that it is giving resources and support for training local law enforcement on this issue. So I thank you all for being here, and I'm going to now introduce and ask the great Secretary of Labor, Hilda Solis, to come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you, and I want to thank Attorney General Harris for inviting me, because she has been such a stalwart on this issue of combating human trafficking, not just as a former prosecutor in San Francisco, but obviously now statewide. And she has made this her #1 priority since day one. I also want to welcome Attorney General from Mexico, Ibanez, for being here as well, and all the other designated speakers here, as well as one of our individuals who will be speaking personally about her own case. You know, this is a fastest growing criminal enterprise in California, and it's also the most hidden in public view. Today there are victims of labor trafficking who are living and working in plain sight in communities across our state here. Not only by working together can we give the courage to escape and start over, and the help to allow for many of these victims to receive some of the lost wages that they are owed. It's very important that we play a key role here through the Department of Labor and through the federal government. And by working together, we can bring criminals who exploit them, as was said by the Attorney General, to justice. You know, President Obama says we must call this outrage by its true name: modern-day slavery. When a migrant worker finds himself working in a factory or a field for little or no pay and is beaten if he tries to escape, that is slavery. When a woman is locked in a sweatshop or trapped in a home as a domestic servant, unable to leave, that is slavery. We have an obligation to condemn human trafficking and punish it to the fullest extent of the law. This fall, President Barack Obama announced a sweeping new plan to fight this problem, here at home and abroad. And we're strengthening our training so law enforcement and investigators, even at the Department of Labor, our Wage and Hour Division, can spot warning signals. We're turning the tables on traffickers, and we're using the internet to exploit their victims, so we're using technology to stop them. We're making it easier for victims to find resources online to blow the whistle, and we're challenging college students to develop tools that young people can use to stay safe online and use their smartphones. So let's be clear. Right now, it's the time for Congress to renew the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. It shouldn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. This should be a bipartisan issue, and it's wrong to deny victims the support and resources that they need to break free, to be safe, and to rebuild their lives. In America, we know that we can do better. The President recently signed an executive order to enhance our zero-tolerance policy regarding trafficking in federal contracts. The United States is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the world. The Obama administration is taking unprecedented steps to strengthen compliance, so American tax dollars are never used to fund these heinous activities. At the Department of Labor, we're playing an important role in the fight against labor trafficking. Our wage and hour investigators are often the first to discover the signs of trafficking. We provide translation services during federal, state, and local investigations. And we work with local law enforcement to go after the perpetrators of labor trafficking. I've signed partnerships already with dozens of foreign embassies and consulates, so migrant workers also know their rights and can go to these institutions they trust so they can seek help and assistance. The Labor Department is working to help survivors once they are out of harm's way. We're providing employment services also to help survivors because we know that they also have to have some tools to get back into society and get workforce training experience. And we're helping to secure millions of dollars in back wages and damages to help them start a new life. Los Angeles is one of 6 cities chosen to pilot anti-trafficking coordination teams. We brought together officials from the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney, and the Labor Department. And we are meeting regularly and sharing our leads. We won't rest until we change the calculus of gangs and human smugglers who make the perverse calculation that rewards of trafficking outweigh the criminal risks. We won't rest until we